With all he's been through, the highest of highs racing can offer, the lowest of lows, it's hard to believe Tommy Berry is just 32 years of age. He's won 3 golden slippers. There were the famous 3 TJs aboard Chautauqua, a Derby, all sorts of races at the top level. But there's also been tragedy. The racing world was rocked. His world was rocked by the sudden death of his brother to a disease almost 10 years ago now, Nathan, and we have the Nathan Berry named after him every autumn here in Sydney. And then there's been the suspension, but he's come back from that now. He's back in the saddle. During that time out, he went and found himself. He worked at a turf farm, hung out with his wife and his 4 kids, and racing's better for it because when Tommy Berry's riding well, the punters are happy. Welcome to the heart of racing, Tommy Berry.
Thanks for having me on the show, guys.
So it's been a couple of weeks now, several weeks since you've returned to the saddle full time. How's it been?
Yeah, it's been great. Overwhelming with the support, I guess. I know I've worked hard for it, but in saying that, you can't expect to get the support that I've had straight away. And I guess a couple of nice winners in my first week was vital. And
Handy.
yeah, it is. And my first couple of meetings were ordinary. I remember coming home saying to Shani, I don't know if I've still got it, but
Really?
yeah, well, you just lose that sort of sense of that balance. And I rode in, I think, 80 barrier trials before I'd had a race ride back.
Really?
And in barrier trials, you let people in, you let people out, and stuff like that. And I got to my first couple of meetings, and people were just shoving me out the way. And I remember going home and saying, "You got to switch on." And then, yeah, by Saturday, it all come to, it all worked out.
Was it hard to? I suppose you've got to keep your contacts, Tommy. You've got to have people trust to put you on after being out for so many months. Was it hard to do all of that?
Not really. I feel like I've got a great association with a lot of the trainers I ride for and a lot of the owners, and I've built that up over many years. And they know the person I am, and I was very open about what happened. And, they knew that, there wasn't anything untowards going, whether it was riding their horses. I gave their horses every chance. So they had all the faith in me when I was coming back. And as I said, I've got a really good relationship with them, and that continued while I was out. And it's continued now that I'm back.
Take us through, obviously you had your time off. Take us through sort of the benefits you subsequently got from that time off. I know you've been quite vocal about it in the press, but just take our listeners and viewers through what you sort of discovered and the benefits of having that time out.
Well, I guess something that one of the biggest changes to me was figuring out a lot more about myself. And that sounds a bit strange, but I never took any time off after Nathan passed. And I always talk about Nathan quite a bit, and a lot goes back to him because he was such a big part of my life. And we've not taking any time off after he'd passed and just trying to work through it, and that I thought I was doing the right thing. And it's been 9 years now, and it's the first break I've had. And I think since he's been gone, I've slowly, in that time, I'd turned into a person that I never thought I'd be and I never wanted to be. And I guess in the time I've had off, I've been able to reflect on the last 9 years since he's been gone. And if I could say that I was proud of the person I was or I became since he was gone, I definitely wasn't. And I had to get back to the person that I was when he was around. And that was very hard because when he was here, everything seemed easy. I had my best friend there, a guy that I could turn to at any stage, and I felt complete. And since he's been gone, and it sounds selfish because I've got 4 beautiful kids and a wife, but my life hasn't felt complete for a long time. And I've had to sort of come to terms with that it never will, again, without him here. And so I've had to sort of go back to like what made me happy when he was here and the person I was when Nathan was here. And that's the person that everyone loved, and that's the person I loved as well. And I haven't liked myself for a long time. So I got to liking myself again and doing things that made me happy, made my family happy. And yeah, just learning about myself and what I needed to be the best and get back to what I needed to do to be the best. So, like I said, that's a lot to take in, but I think that's if you talk about something that really changed while I was off, and that was it. That's, I've come back into racing now, a different person, fresh, feeling good, fit, happy, and that's not only showing in my riding, but I think everyone can see that that's had anything to do with me.
It almost gave you a chance to grieve from what had happened. You'd sort of hadn't given yourself that opportunity.
Yeah, exactly, and no one does, and it's easy for anyone to say, oh, like you've got to see a counsellor, or you've got to do all these things, and I did all that, and they helped. They put a band-aid on it for a little while, and it's easy to tell people, you've got to give yourself some time to grieve, or but you can't do that. You can't tell someone how to do it. They've got to be able to do it on their own, and like I said, it's taken me 9 years and a disqualification that I was gutted when I received it, but things happen for a reason in life, and that's, for me, that was a turning point for me. I think it just gave me that time to grieve, and start accepting what had happened and where my life's gonna go and what kind of person I want to be for me and my family.
It's pretty sad to hear you say that, Tommy, that you felt as though you didn't like yourself at certain times. It's pretty confronting to hear that. Like, can you share with us, I don't know, some of the behaviours that you thought, you didn't like about yourself? Were you living week to week or going ride to ride, not thinking properly? What was it?
There's a few things that sort of come into it. One thing's like not having an emotion, not having any feeling. Like when you lose someone that you love so deeply, and it's hurt you so much, your feelings switch off, and you start to not feel anything, whether it's people in your family or friends, when things happen in their lives, or you've done something and you hurt someone, and their emotions, you don't have any emotions. Your emotions are switched off. It's like it's sort of like you're dead inside, and
Yep.
it's a tough thing to say and for people to hear, but that's just the way I felt for quite a while, and so I had to learn to, not even learn, but just get back to, feeling again, and when you don't have any emotions, you make decisions in life that you don't really care for the consequences so much as well. And I hurt people, while I was off, whether it was family or friends and stuff like that, over that 9 years, and they're things that I've had to just look at myself and go, that's not you. You don't want to be that person, and you're better than that. And the 9 months, how I got myself in that position was one of them. Drinking a lot on occasions, and we know what drinking does. It stops you from preparing right for your job, for your life, your kids. So that had a big impact on my life at times. But all that stuff now I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on, which is great.
And it's hard, right? Like, racing is a 24/7, 365 day a week. And
Yeah.
Tommy's one of the hardest working jockeys in the room. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy to call some jockeys not hardworking. Tommy is hardworking. But he it just does, you would never have that opportunity in even in just a month or 3 months. Yeah. Like, Tommy can attest, the competitiveness of the Sydney jockey room, if you took a 3-month break, it would be like taking a 12-month break, wouldn't it, Tommy?
Yeah, it would. And you can't just take a 3-month break in racing, because everyone's like, oh, hey, where are you going? You've got a job and you've got to do it. So a lot of people's breaks are when they're forced breaks, whether it's like James McDonald or Nash Willer. And I was speaking to Nash when I got my disqualification, and he said, I don't know if I'd be riding now if I didn't have that time off, where was that 5 years ago now?
Yeah.
He said because he gave his body a break, he gave himself a bit of time away from racing, rejuvenated himself. So even Nash, he's riding now at his age, I believe, and I didn't have the pleasure of watching Nash when I was younger, but he's the best jockey in Australia at the moment, the way he's riding. It's crazy. And if he didn't have that time off, maybe he wouldn't have been the same, it's great for us, but unless you've been given a break, you're not going to take it yourself, because we're competitors. We want to get out there every week and compete. So we're not going to shy away from that and just go away for 3 months. So for me, it was forced, but it was incredible.
Yeah, well, you've been so honest about it, and I think if people are listening to this cold and didn't quite know what happened, the stewards found Tommy guilty of taking a $15,000 payment from a punter that was put into a bank account of Tommy's mother, and it was used on renovations for a house. And Tommy's been really honest about what happened and the fact that his decision-making was impaired. But Tommy, one of the things that I read about just as you were about to come back was after you stuck your hand up and admitted to all those mistakes, you went and worked on a turf farm. And it was one of the things that enabled you to, I don't know, have a good hard think and a good hard look at yourself, and you quite enjoyed it. You found it quite cathartic.
Yeah,
I think I wrote to you at the time when I read it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, it was good. I was working 50 hours a week too, so I was working 10 hours a day from 6 till 4.
How did you cope? How did you cope working?
You just
working
said he was a hard worker.
Well, no, it was good. I'll tell you what, it's amazing with jobs in it that the pros and cons of it. So we'll go to the pros, and the pros were that you're finishing at 4 o'clock. So I got to spend the afternoons with my kids when they got home from school. I got to spend a Saturday and a Sunday with them, so it's a full weekend, and I got to spend public holidays with them. Plus, I got to eat and drink what I wanted, go to their birthdays, their parties, like that was all the great things. But the downside was there's no competitiveness in the job I was doing, and I'm a competitor. So I enjoy getting away from that for a while. Like I rode for 15 years, so that's a long time to be riding, competing, and you're competing in Sydney, so you're competing at the top, So it was hard. So to get away from competing for a bit, it was nice. It was a good weight off my shoulders, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoy being part of a team because, we're sole traders and I'm riding against my mates. Where I was a part of a team out on the turf farm where we went there and we got it done together. We sat down, had a drink after work together, and then we went home. So that was pretty cool. But you get like 4 or 5 months in and it's like, geez, like I've got to win something. I've got to, I'll race Shani down to the front gate. Let's go. Like I just missed being in a room against guys that I was competing against. So that was a downside for me.
And just to highlight, when you came back, I mean, you were telling a very pretty tale when you first came back about how your weight was good and whatnot. But I believe there was a hiatus that had to be taken just before you returned to Thailand, was it? Was it with John and Hugh? Is that right? Am I getting that right? And take us through, how heavy did you get? And you're not this is not that personal. Their weight is judged every week. So where did you get to, and how long and how hard was it to get back down to your race weight?
Yeah, well, I got over 70 kilos.
Really?
Well, what are you now?
Yeah, well, I rode 55 yesterday, I think. So,
so 20 kilos.
Yeah. So I was a fair way over my riding weight. But it's funny because when I first started working at the turf farm, I went there with like a ham and cheese wrap,
Yeah.
And then because they're long days, then I started ducking up to the shop and I'd get, something on the side. And then I was like, oh, Sean, I don't need lunch for tomorrow. I'll just get it at work. So you go get a burger, and then it was a burger and chips, and then it was a dim sim while I was waiting for my burger and chips. It was like,
hey, we've all been there. We're still there.
We're still there.
Yeah, I've got a bit out of control, but I said to myself, like, I want to do this right. And when I come back, there's no stones unturned. And so I gave myself 14 weeks of eating healthy, training 3 times a day, and then I did 8 days at Phuket Cleanse at a boot camp with John and Huey, sort of halfway through, and that was good. It sort of changed up the routine of what I was doing at home, and then I was lucky enough to get allowed to come back to track work early, so that was 10 weeks of track work and trials, or a month of trials, but I was doing trials absolutely everywhere. So I think, like I said, I did 75 to 80 trials before I'd even come back. I did 40 in 1 week, and that really got me into like where I needed to be. But I was pretty uncomfortable.
I got to go back here. Boot camp cleanse.
Yeah.
What happens at boot camp cleanse
with John O'Shea?
With John O'Shea, he looks pretty fit, John O'Shea. But what happens there?
Well, John didn't do the cleanse part. So you do the first 3 days is a juice cleanse. So it's no food for 3 days.
Wow.
When you get there, and then you're working out 3 to 4 times a day, and it's obviously hot and humid over there. And but they focus a lot on recovery, and it's good. You once again, you're there with people that are all there for the same reason.
Yep.
They're there to get away from their lives. You barely touch your mobile phone. You just focus on yourself. And it was good. Huey was there 3 days before me and left 3 days earlier. So he'd had a bit of a head start. So he set a really good sort of foundation for where I wanted to be at, where I was training while I was over there. And it was quite fun. It was good to see John O'Shea doing the box, and that was pretty funny. He was bugging at the start. Geez, he was huffing and puffing, but by the time he left, he was killing it. So it was good fun.
Well, anyway, we should talk about some of Tommy's career anyway.
Some of his massive highlights.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with
Overreach
Vancouver or stay inside in the Golden Slipper? Well, let's go straight to Chautauqua.
We got to go straight to Chautauqua.
The big grey.
Tell us about Chautauqua as a personality. Like we see the story from the whole way through, but tell us what the horse was actually like.
Well, I only knew him really on race day because they wouldn't let me anywhere near him, away from the track. I don't even think I rode him until he stopped jumping. I'd never even ridden him in a barrier trial. So, I think out of my first 8 rides on him, I think I might have only had 10 or 11 rides on him. And we won 3 TJ Smiths, Group 1 in Hong Kong, and then the Medicado in Melbourne. So, with not having too many rides on him, we had a great record. He was a really quirky animal, and that's hence the reason why I didn't have a lot to do with him away from race day. He had the same track work rider with him all the time, the same strapper with him all the time. He wouldn't let anyone else in his box bar them people. I tried to give him a cut over the door one day, and he tried to savage me. But then on race day, we got along so well. So he was a real loner when it come to a racehorse. He enjoyed his own company. He didn't like to be fussed about, and I think he was very similar on race day. He didn't want you annoying him. You just had to leave him alone, let him be where he wanted to be in the race, and just have the confidence that he had the ability to overcome anything or how far back he got in races. And I guess that's where we got along well because I had so much faith in him, and I knew what I had under the bonnet. But what worked with us for so long obviously worked against us in the end. He's very strong-minded, and when it come to not wanting to go anymore, I always had in the back of my head that it was never going to happen again.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a sec. But I got to ask you this, though, about the horse. He had to have been the fastest horse in a straight line probably anywhere in the world ever. I can't imagine any horse in a straight line was ever faster than him.
No, he was... Well, the thing with him, and I guess it's all good, really good horses. And I'm not talking about good horses, I'm talking about champions. They can sustain a run for so much longer than any other horse. And that's what made him so good. His splits from the half mile to the winning post, he didn't stop. He just kept getting faster. And I've always found also with good horses over the years that I've ridden, even though they're letting down so well, they feel like it feels like it's in slow motion. And when you watch him gallop, his stride was that big. It didn't look like he was going that quick, but it's only reason you knew he was going quick is because he was passing everything so quick. So he just had them attributes, and you go back to his third TJ Smith, and it was the only day, and I'm not going to say she was overshadowed Winks, but she won on that day as well. But
everyone remembers Chautauqua from that day.
He was the winner of the day that day. And I think Darren Flindell called it the best, that he's one of the best moments you'll ever see on a racetrack, and it will be.
And I know you said you always had faith in him, but say it with a straight face that in every one of those TJs, you thought you were home and hosed at the 800-metre mark.
No, only one of them. Only one of them. The first one, it was on a really heavy track, and we went to the outside fence, and that was a tough one. Second one, I've never been so confident with a horse.
Really?
He was purring for me in the run. But the third one was the only time I'd ever pulled the stick coming to the corner on him. And it was the only time I never looped the field. I actually came up underneath him because I thought to myself, he's not going well enough today. And this was for his best ever TJ Smith win. So I got that wrong. So he dropped the bit there around the corner in his third TJ Smith, and I had to give him a couple around the bum. And then I sort of cut through the field and come up underneath Terra Vista, and then that's when, he's still second last, I think, at the 250. So That was his best win, but that's the only one I actually didn't think I could win.
That they weren't panic strikes at the at the 500-meter mark.
Well, I wasn't worried about the 5 before the 100, I'll tell you that much. He was getting it that day. So
Exactly.
yeah, but and another thing with that horse is you always knew I had something left when I hadn't pulled the stick through to the right yet, because every time you pulled the stick from left to right with him, he'd just find again. So I always sort of saved that up for him to the last 100 metres.
Chautauqua, that's great. But the other thing, Tommy's had a tremendous record in his Golden Slippers.
The Golden Slipper's unbelievable. Overreach, Vancouver, stay inside. Like 3 Golden Slippers. He's only 32 years of age. It's remarkable, Tommy.
Yeah, look, I've always had a good knack with 2-year-olds. I don't know why it is. I guess if you look at the record, I've had a couple of Magic Millions, as you said, 3 Golden Slippers. And I've probably won most lead-ups as well. And I've just always had a good association with him. I guess that goes down to the days of riding for Gay Waterhouse, and she's so brilliant with her 2-year-olds, and you've got to be positive with them early. Always put them into the race, and that they'll sort of do the rest for you. So and I've got a knack of finding a nice one. But in saying that, I always get good opportunities as well.
Which of the 2-year-old wins stands out the most for you? Like, you've had Overreach, Vancouver, and Stay Inside, which we've said a few times. Which one has the best story for you, like sticks out in your brain?
I think Overreach probably. It was my first one. I was quite young, and she was a dominant favourite going into the race. I remember the rail was off that day, and everyone said you can't go you've got to come down the centre of the track, and she drew barrier 1. I went and walked the track with Nath, and because she'd drawn barrier 1, and I said to Nath, like, there's nothing wrong with the fence, and he goes, well, just go there. And I said, I'm not going there on $1.60 chance, not a chance in the world. And he goes, no, well, if you think it's the best part, then just ride her like the best horse. So I had a chat with Gay, pulled her aside, and she said, look, your honour, you do what you want, and I'll back you 110%. So it was just a really good storyline before the race. Obviously, having my brother there to give me a hug before I'd even got off the horse, he almost dragged me off, was also, memories now that I can look back quite fondly.
Absolutely incredible. Have you got another horse? We've talked about Chautauqua, those Golden Slipper winners. Is there another horse you've sat on, Tommy, that you've gone, my goodness, this thing's got an engine?
Yeah, I do. There's 2. Well, I won a Group 2 on Winx, so
yeah,
I'll always claim that. I won the Far Lap Stakes on her. She wasn't Winx when I won on her, but still something cool to tell my kids. Designs are Rome. I won 5 Group 1s on him. I won the Derby on him in Hong Kong.
Wow, 5.
And he won about 8, I think, because Joe won a few on him when I was back here in Sydney. But probably one of the best horses I've sat on, and I can't believe his name's escaping me right now, but he's a Japanese horse that stands at Arrowfield.
Maurice?
Maurice.
No. Yeah, Maurice.
So I rode him in a Group 1 in Japan when I was over there.
Yep.
And he is just one of the biggest, strongest monsters of a horse that I've ever sat on. And that's no surprise, because we know the Japanese horses are just freaks when it comes to size. But I remember cantering off on him to the gates, and I had my bridge, and it was like I had my bridge over a bus. It was just incredible. And yeah, he won the mile in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And then he spent 10 days in quarantine, and I was riding him in a Group 1 in Japan. And he was short favourite. And I went into the mounting yard, and Horry, the trainer, said to my interpreter, Horry said he probably couldn't win today. And I said, hey, go back and ask him why. Like, it's a Group 1, he's a $1.60 favourite. How can he not win? And he said because he'd spent 10 days in quarantine and he couldn't work him properly. So anyway, he goes, just keep hold of him and do not let him go to the 200. And I said, sweet. So I sat outside the leader, 150 to 1 shot in front. So you get to the top of the straight, and the 151 shot kicks, and I just let it go. I had the 3 chances behind me. I waited. I got to the 250 and I let it go, and the 150 to 1 shot didn't stop. It beat me a pimple. So, so I think I'm the only one that...
Did he run through the line?
Oh, like, if I just let him go earlier, he would have won by 4.
No, you're wrong. Trainers are always right. Don't forget that. It's important for young aspiring jockeys to learn that.
Well, probably on the wrong podcast to say that.
Well, Tommy Berry, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you on the Heart of Racing. I've got to commend you on your honesty. As I said earlier in the show, racing's better for having Tommy Berry back, healthy and happy. And we're so glad you spent some time to us today. You're a champion bloke. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks for having me on the show, guys. Cheers.